Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Game.com video, we're going to be discussing and analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up over the past 24 or so hours. We have two pieces of news for you today. The first one is the Titan V graphics card performance results. That's right, benchmarks have already leaked out onto the internet. The result? Well, it absolutely stomps, as you probably expect, anything else on the market. So we'll get into the performance results in just a second, and then we'll move over to Ryzen 2, specifically some, frankly, bonkers, absolutely crazy leaked specifications for Ryzen 2. Now, these specifications, if they are genuine, tell us that for $400 US, you can get 12 cores and 24 threads. That's right, 12 cores, 24 threads for only $400 US. We'll get to that in a moment. So first of all, quick refresher on Titan V, which of course stands for Volta, don't you know? It is based upon the GV100 GPU core and is built on the 12nm process. 5,120 CUDA cores, 1200 MHz for the base, 1455 MHz for the boost, with an FP32 performance of 15 teraflops and 12 gigabytes of HBM2, putting out 652.8 gigabytes per second and a TDP of 250 watts, and is available to buy right now and will cost you $3,000 US, which, given what levels of performance this card actually puts out compared to the professional solutions from Nvidia, it's actually a pretty damn good bargain. So, a Reddit user has managed to get hold of one of these cards and has posted to the internet the type of performance which will quite honestly make your eyes water. It is worth noting that all of these results are at stock, so there is probably room left in the tank if you were to start overvolting it, tweaking it, modding it, that type of thing. So in Firestrike 1.1, the GPU manages to absolutely decimate the Titan XP. The Titan XP has a graphics score of around 28,000, obviously depending on the rest of your system, whereas this card, once again running at stock, manages 32,774 points, whereas if you overclock it, it's one of the few overclock results we do have, it manages 36,000 points. To put that into any level of perspective at all, that's almost 10,000 points higher than a GTX 1080 Ti/Ti. Whereas with Uni-Engine superposition, the card scores 9,961 points, and this, by the way, is with it only a 6700K. Now, to put that into some level of context, a GTX 1080 Ti Kingpin, which had been overclocked to a staggering 2,581 megahertz, managed to score just 8,642 points. So in short, this is some 1,300 points higher than a GTX 1080 Ti, which has been overclocked to about 2.6 gigahertz. Now I can hear the naysayers among you. You're saying, but Paul, these are synthetic results. Who cares? What about actual real performance results? Well, glad you asked, my friend. In such cases, we have a crazy preset, Ashes of the Singularity Escalation at 8,700 points. And that, once again, is crazy preset 1440p. We have Gears of War. This one is running at the resolution of 1440p. And that is putting out a startling 157 frames per second. Then we have Rise of the Tomb Raider, DirectX 12, of course, and that is putting out 65 frames a second. Now, Rise of the Tomb Raider gets around 60, at least from my testing on a GTX 1080 Ti. That is slightly overclocked. Ashes of the Singularity is very impressive as well. However, we are actually putting out a GTX 1080 Ti video either today or tomorrow, which is be a full review, and I'm putting the final touches on the multitasking video of Threadripper, a 1950X combined, with also a GTX 1080 Ti, 32GB of RAM, and a gaming Pro Carbon X399 motherboard from MSI. That is purely multitasking focused, so that is going to be running lots of applications at once while gaming. It's not just a regular review. I've got that coming up as well. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Gears of War at 1440p, you're looking at a score on a GTX 1080 Ti of around 120-ish, 115, 120 frames a second, depending obviously on the CPU and what's going on with the rest of the system. To put this into some level of context, you're looking at about 160, 157.5 here. That is bonkers! That is absolutely crazy. Just look at the numbers here. Only 52.6% of the time were you GPU bound. And that is, once again, running a 6700K. And we really would like to see that running with a more robust processor. For example, I'd like to see that running with like an i9-7900 or perhaps a Threadripper-based processor, perhaps even slightly overclocked to really let the CPU strut its stuff. The GPU strut its stuff, because obviously at points here, the CPU is actually holding back the GPU, and that just is what it is. Speaking of CPUs and not holding things back, let's talk about Ryzen 2, shall we? Now, before I get in trouble in a couple of days' time and people, start giving me messages and telling me that this is not genuine, I did not release this slide. It comes to us via Kit Guru, specifically their YouTube channel. And on Kit Guru, they have managed to get a slide which they are proclaiming to be genuine. Now, obviously, once again, I did not get this slide. I cannot speak for its validity. But if it's true, it's absolutely bonkers. Now, I'm going to tell you about the numbers which are here. It is, let's say, not exactly the most detailed of slides. It looks pretty blurry because it was in the top left corner of a video, which I'll link in the description of this video. So you can go ahead and check it out. Although the announcer only kind of glazes over it, to be honest. But anyway, so it looks like it reads to me... the Ryzen 7 2700, that is 10 cores, 20 threads. That runs, I'm going to give you the turbo clocks only, 4.5 GHz. Then the 2800 has 12 cores, 24 threads. That puts out 4.9 GHz. And finally, the 2800X, 12 cores, 24 threads. And this has a base clock of 4.6, but can go up to 5.1. Now, there are a couple of things which are really striking to me. One is the prices. So you're looking at $329 for the 2700U. That is really good value for money. I mean, that's really good value. 10 cores, 20 threads, and once again, 4.5 gigahertz. That's meaty enough of a clock speed as well. But you've also got those additional cores. So you've got 2 cores, 4 threads more than the 1700 or its ilk. But the 2800 is absolutely crazy. I mean, 12 cores, 24 threads. That, by the way, is the same number as the Ryzen Threadripper 1920X, I think it is. That is crazy. I mean, that's the kind of core number that you'd expect in a high-end desktop. Of course, there are a couple of caveats here. The first one, you are missing out on the quad-channel memory of a HEDT, and also presumably... because it's supposedly still going to run on AM4, you're also not going to have the sheer number of PCIe lanes, which a HEDT would also provide as well. So, for those looking to put out like a workstation, I imagine the sheer memory bandwidth of, let's say, a Threadripper 1920X would still probably outperform this. With that said, though, you do have a clock speed increase. And I imagine also that this presumably will mean that we're going to see another Threadripper if this is genuine. And that really brings us to the last point, doesn't it? That's a large clock speed increase. Obviously, I'm rounding things up here because, well, I don't want to give you every model number compared to every processor because this is more of like a news/quick analysis. I want to wait and see if it's genuine before I give a full analysis on this. But you're roughly looking at a 1 gigahertz increase, which is absolutely crazy. I mean, 1 gigahertz, that means you're going from about 4 gigahertz to 5.1. So obviously the other models are slightly different because some of those were like 3.9 or whatever, and those have gone to 4.5, which is, more reasonable. That's about 600 megahertz, which is within the realms of what you can expect at like 10 to 20%, depending on what they're actually doing with the node. We don't know all of the details yet. They might have shrunk it down, but they might have also made a few other small changes in terms of how the process is actually put together to allow the CPU to just, simply crank higher in terms of its clocks. But the other thing, and this one's probably more interesting to me, is this is saying it's Ryzen 2, and it says that the pre-order date is January 16th and launching on February 1st. So that tells me that, I thought that basically there's a lot of confusion at the moment whether the die shrink version of Ryzen, the 12NM, is going to be known as Ryzen 2 or not. So this tells us it probably will be, but to be honest, the big one for me is, well, that's a lot of cores. That's a lot of cores. That's a crap ton of cores. And while I do appreciate that the cores themselves, in terms of the actual size of the dies, is not that big, compared to everything else, you're also presumably going to have to put in another CCX here. That's essentially what you're doing, right? Because each CCX, as we know, has 4 processor cores. So if you have 4 plus 4, that's 8, and then, once again, presumably you're adding another 4 processors, so that's another CCX. So that obviously means you've also got to add in all of the level 2 cache, the logic, the interconnect, but also level 3, which is not small on the current Zen CPUs. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, because obviously we don't know what the actual architecture of Ryzen 2 is going to be. We don't know what tweaks they're going to make. Perhaps they're going to make some tweaks to how cache is distributed or something like that. I don't know. One of the common complaints, of course, of current Ryzen is that there is a lot of latency between data going from, let's say, CPU core 1 to CPU core 5, or more specifically the caches of those. So let's say CCX cluster 1, which has cores 0 to 3, and CCX cluster 2, the second cluster, which has the other 4 cores. If you have data going from CCX 1 and a CPU needs on the second CCX, it needs to access the data in the first CCX cluster. Basically, there could be some latency there. So maybe one of the things they're doing is trying to improve that, but how that's going to work in reality, I'm not quite sure yet. And frankly, no one is until we actually get data. I don't know. AMD do have this thing where more cores, and I'm pretty sure at this point, if they were going to Starbucks and they were to be asked what do they want, what coffee do they want, Lisa Sue will, answer, more cores please. That's probably going to be her. I'm pretty sure on her coffee in the morning, they're literally sprinkling the silicon from dead processor cores. They're probably just literally sprinkling it, on their coffee. Because let's just be honest, if they did hit these numbers, and I'm referring, of course, to the clock speed as well as the sheer number of cores. Hell, let's say that all I go to is 10 cores at 20 threads, but hit 4.5 gigahertz. To me, that would smack Coffee Lake away. That would just no one's going to buy Coffee Lake. Because let's assume there is a few tweaks that improve IPC. Just a small tweak on IPC. Let's even say a couple of percent. Let's say 5%. But once again, you've got 5% there, you've got 4.5 gigahertz, so you're looking at around, just over 10% improvement in clock speed. So let's, for sake of argument, say 15 to 20% improvement total in performance per thread. And you've also got an additional 2 cores, 4 threads, compared to a 1700. So once again, the 2700 would have 10 cores, 20 threads, 4.5 gigahertz. Who the hell would buy Coffee Lake? Who the hell would buy an 8700K? You just wouldn't. And even if Intel were to tweak the next generation Coffee Lake a little bit and maybe, do a few bits here and there to improve clock speed, it would still be very hard for me to argue to buy Coffee Lake. The only thing I've got now is are Intel going to release the 8-core Coffee Lake? Who the hell knows? There was that one leak that told us yes, but since then nothing has popped up. So, and with the leaked roadmaps that we've also seen, I'm kind of leaning towards no. Who knows? Second thing, is this even slightly genuine? If it is, AMD are just going to stomp the competition for a good year. I don't know how Intel are going to compete with this. Obviously, the one thing Intel do have is brand name. And it's going to be hard for some people to be convinced that AMD should be purchased. And, that's fine. But I kind of don't want Intel to not have competition. I want Intel to be able to counter this, at least to a degree, because it's not good to only have one company as the answer. But then again, I think AMD to a degree deserve this, because obviously it would really help their finances, and that's a good thing. And let's face it, for the customers, if I was to be able to say to you, for even, to be honest with you, to be really honest, I was going to say that, you know, for hobby video editors, for hobbyists who are doing like 3D rendering or video editing or image correction or whatever, I was going to say that, you know, this is perfect for hobbyists. But to be honest, I would even say up to semi-professional. I mean, once again, we don't know what the memory bandwidth situation is going to be here, but assuming that higher clock speed memory is easier to get working on these 2000 series Ryzens, I can imagine that a lot of semi-professionals would be more than happy to run a 2700 or a 2800, even if they are losing a little bit of performance in memory bandwidth. But anyway, as I said, we'll just have to wait and see. With all of that said, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.